Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. In the last couple of sessions, we looked at Allama Iqbal's reading of Immanuel Kant, and basically we emphasized the fact that how Iqbal's reading of Kant is fundamentally wrong. And this misreading has bearing on his understanding of modernism as well. And in the next few sessions, we will look at how he gets Ghazali's mission and Ghazali's misunderstand Ghazali's mission and his main philosophical and Kalami positions. His misreading of Kant drifts him towards modernism, and his misreading of Ghazali drifts him away from orthodox Islamic positions in these matters. But pointing Iqbal's misreadings is not just a philosophical or hermeneutic exercise, but is something which is called forth by Iqbal's mission in these lectures as well, which we looked at, and I'll get back to it in a minute. We are continuing Iqbal's mission in the sense that, as he realizes in his preface, that his our duty is to carefully to watch the progress of human thought and to maintain an independent and critical attitudes towards modern thought. And by independent and critical attitude, we understand the attitude from the viewpoint of Islam, because there's no other independent and critical position as far as we are concerned. So in this sense, we continuing Iqbal's line of work. And in Iqbal's, as he also realizes that as a result of this criticism, the kind of materialism which it originally necessitated, that is modern thought, is rapidly disappearing. And here Iqbal's main, I think, mistake, and it is an understandable mistake, is that Western civilization or modern civilization is materialistic in its fundamental deviation, but materialism is just one form of deviation. More lasting and more deep deviation of modern thought actually comes from idealism, and Iqbal doesn't realize it. That's why he embraces Kant, and that's why in part embraces Hegel as well, not because he has any affiliation with Hegel or Kant as such, but in order to combat what he thinks is the main threat of the modern Western thought, or modernity to religion, and that is materialism. But once we realize that the Kantian idealistic position is much more lasting and much more deep deviation from the Abrahamic position of Islam, we refocus ourselves on Kant, and we realize that defending Islam and against modernism is also defending it against Kantianism and idealism. So in this sense, we are continuing Iqbal's work, because as he realizes It must, however, be remembered that there is no such thing as finality in philosophical thinking. As knowledge advances and fresh avenues of thought are open, other views, and probably sounder view than those set forth in these lectures are possible. So, in that sense, our duty is carefully to watch the progress of human thought and maintain an independent, critical attitude towards it. And that's what separates Iqbal's thinking from the rest of modernist thinking. So he is influenced by. So here's the difference between Iqbal and other modernists, Muslim modernism. So here is the main difference between Iqbal and other Muslim modernists. His main motivation is defending Islam. There's no doubt about that. He might make motivation defend Islam against modernism, which is basically capitalism as a civilization. Secondly, there's no doubt that his stance towards modernity, despite his inevitable his attitude toward modernity, despite his inevitable influence from modernity, learning from modernity, is that his attitude is that of independence. And critical attitude. That's the second thing. And third thing is that, and that shows in, even though he is influenced by Kant and things, and he's totally wrong in that. But he also brings forth, as we will see here, and focuses on the currents in modernist thinking, which rebel against the hegemony of modernity itself through internal critique of modernity. For example, his focus on Nietzsche and other Bergson and other thinkers. That's the third thing. So even though he's influenced by Kant and he mistreats Ghazali, mistreats Descartes' mission in a sense, totally misunderstand he understands the challenge of science, but totally misunderstands the basic ethos of science and its challenge in that sense. He also counterweights that with highlighting the points in his thinking, the point in Western thinking or the currents in Western thinkings which are internally critical of modernity and which are also um, doing some sort of deconstructive uh, thinking vis-a-vis modernity. On the other hand, and the fourth thing is, Iqbal is writing in you know in the heydays of in many ways heydays of imperialism, while modernists today are writing in the wake of the internal crises after crisis of modernity and capitalism. So Iqbal can be excused for being influenced by modernity in certain ways, in a way in which modern Muslim modernist cannot. So in a sense, highlighting Iqbal's mistakes in this regard is basically not is a continuation of Iqbal's work, and is aimed at contemporary imperialist inspired Muslim modernism and pseudo Islamist modernism and postmodernism. And this is the imperialist stance, imperialist inspired in the sense that his main purpose is not to defend Islam, but it's to sort of show the compatibility Islam and capitalism and modernity by inevitably distorting Islam. They don't care about that. So it's mostly the outcome of either the mental retardation which comes in the wake of the cultural domination of capitalism and modernity, or and due to the material benefits which accrue from indulging in these sort of products. So while Iqbal can be excused for misreading Kant or Ghazali, these modernists and pseudo-Islamic modernists and postmodernists cannot be excused for repeating the same garbage over and over again without adding an iota to age-old cliches. So in that sense, when we talk about highlights, when we highlight misreadings of Iqbal, whether they are his misreading of Kant, or now we will see in next session his misreading of philosophical skepticism and misunderstanding what philosophical skepticism is. And what its function is in the modern philosophical thinking. What we are trying to highlight is, what we are trying to do is to continue Iqbal's work, but also develop a critique of Muslim modernism and pseudo-Islamic modernism and postmodernism, contemporary Islamic modernism and postmodernism. Okay, so let's get back to the text. So we have considered Kant's position in you know, in a bit of detail, in fair bit of detail, and we'll get back to Kant over and over in these sessions. But now we need to move on. So now he's comparing Ghazali's position to Kant's position. So comparing Ghazali's position vis-a-vis his misreading of Kant's position. So Ghazali's philosophical skepticism, which, however, went a little too far. What does that mean? It's a little too far. It's virtually did the same kind of work in the world of Islam in breaking the back of that proud but shallow rationalism which moved in the same direction as pre-Kantian rationalism in Germany. And there's, however, one important difference between Ghazali and Kant. Kant consistently with his principle could not affirm the possibility of knowledge of God. As we show, in a sense, he did. In a way, he doesn't, but in other aspect, he does. Ghazali, finding no hope in analytics thought, that is, in conceptual thought, moved to mystic experience. And there found an independent content, or there found independent content for religion in mystic experience, that is. So he didn't have any independent content for religion in Islam, in Quran, in the message of the Prophet ﷺ in the last revelation. He had to find it in his mystic experience. We'll get back to that. In this way, he succeeded in securing for religion the right to exist, independently of science and metaphysics. Well, there was no science in Ghazali's time, so I don't know what he means by that. And metaphysics, yes, but the religion has the right to exist. You don't need to secure that right. That right is always there in the Deen and the Law al-Islam. In this way, he succeeded in securing for religion the right to exist independently of science and metaphysics. So there are a lot of claims here which we need to understand and comment on slowly and then draw their implications. So firstly, it's not correct to compare Ghazali and Kant, except for, in a minor details or superficially, because the two men had totally different missions. So Kant and Ghazali. Firstly, as we saw, Ghazali, Kant, so Ghazali's philosophical escape, which, however, went a little too far, virtually did the same kind of work in the world of Islam in breaking the back of that proud but shallow rationalism. So we will get to that shallow rationalism. So Ghazali did break its back, and there's no doubt about that. Although not enough, because in the wake of Ghazali we have Imam Razi, who is a great defender of that shallow rationalism in a certain ways anyway. But then, Ibn Taymiyyah should also, Shaykhul Islam Ibn Taymiyyah should also be seen as basically, fundamentally, people don't see it because of this long, never-ending battle between Ash'ari and Hanbalis. But Imam Ibn Taymiyyah is basically a disciple of Ghazali in many ways, as whoever has read his, books on the critique of reason or critique of logic would know. But just to go back to Kant, as we said, Kant doesn't reject rationalism. Kant actually defends rationalism. And as we saw, he considered his critique of pure reason as an apology for Leibniz, who was a rationalist par excellence. Yes, he does concede ground to empiricism, but empiricism itself is part of rationalism, as we saw, if you look at the broader meaning of rationalism. So even though he concedes some ground to empiricism, but empiricism he concedes ground to itself as part of rationalism. So, and in narrow sense, he also defends rationalism, as we saw in a few sessions ago. So first, to contrast Kant and Ghazali. To start with, it is on the wrong footing, because Kant defends rationalism, and Ghazali actually does deconstruct rationalism of his day. So that's one side. So let's see the basic fundamental, and we did work on Kant in the last two videos. So you should go back to, if you want to, see the details of these arguments. But we need to understand what's the difference between Kant and Ghazali and their mission, and in a bit more detail. So probably I'll stop here and then continue with the contrast between Ghazali and Kant in the next session.